again. He has done it.
He crossed the line in 2 hours, 1 minute and 9 seconds, slashing 30 seconds off his previous record and finishing 40 minutes and 49 seconds ahead of Mark Korir of Kenya, with Ethiopia's Tadu Abate coming in third. The national anthem was once again played in the streets of Berlin, with Kipchoge affirming his marathon credentials with a monumental win in Germany.
Absolutely, still more. In my legs are still more, and I hope future still great.
Yes. Those legs of yours and your body still feel young.
Absolutely, yes. My mind is still actually thinking wise, still moving. The body actually still absorbing the trainings and racing.
What wonderful performance, Elliot. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
In the women's marathon, Kenya's Rosemary Wanjiru finished second on her debut, well under the course record of 2 hours, 18 minutes and 11 seconds set by Gladys Cherono in 2018, as she clocked 2 hours and 18 minutes, 3 seconds ahead of Tigist Abechu of Ethiopia, with the Tigist Asefa of Ethiopia being crowned the champion. Elijah Ogo, NTV Sport.
Well, from that heart-warming moment to a heart-wrenching one, the sounds of gunfire have been ringing again in the deeply vexing regions of Turkana, a place of no law, shelter or mercy. And now these are the consequences of that numbing moment when silence fell over the killing fields, the bodies of the 8 General Service Unit officers that have now been airlifted to Nairobi. The officers who were on the trail of stolen animals were ambushed and killed in an attack that claimed 11 lives in total. And as the community cleans up its wounds, President William Ruto pledged to deal decisively with the gun violence. Gina Kirori has more.
7:30 p.m. at Wilson Airport, Nairobi. And officers from the National Police Service made the solemn journey to collect the bodies of their comrades killed by armed bandits in Turkana County Saturday night. The bodies of the late 8 GSU officers will be transferred to the Chiromo mortuary as funeral preparations continue. According to the National Police Service, 8 officers from the General Service Unit were in pursuit of bandits who had raided a village in Turkana East and made away with livestock. But like sheep led to their slaughter, they were killed by the bandits. The bandits also killed a chief and a civilian identified as Mary Kanyaman, who is said to be the sister of former presidential candidate Ekuru Aukot.
Iwa tunauliwa wamama wale wako na uchungu ya kila mahali, upande ya Pokot na upande wa Turkana. Tunauawa bure kwa barabara. Huyo mama alikuwa anaenda Kamge kuweka amani ya Waturkana na Wapokot.
It is the latest horror story from these deeply vexing ridges, where life has been marked by death and news headlines.
Askari wakiuliwa, wale ambao wamekuja kuchunga watu. Sasa ni watu nani sasa watachunga watu? Sasa ile kitu mimi nauliza nikiwa kiongozi, haya maneno yataendelea mpaka lini? Ni watu wangapi serikali wanaongoja wauliwe Turkana ndio sasa wateke action?
Appealing to government agencies to leave these other side shows, to give us security for the people of Turkana County.
President William Ruto says his government will put a stop to the killings, even as communities living in the shadow of the violence are numbed by the constant blows.
We are doing what we must do as a government to make sure that we see the last of these kind of things, so that our country can be peaceful. I have given authority for the police to have their own budget. They don't have to wait for the office of the president anymore.
The attack came just hours after Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua promised citizens that insecurity will end with Ruto's government and the lasting solutions over the insecurity in Kerio Valley will be found.
Patie sisi nafasi tuweke katibu wa interior ambaye ako na haja ya kufanyia wananchi kazi. Na tufanye mabadiliko hapa na pale ya vitengo za usalama. Tukishamaliza katika Kerio Valley, mimi mwenyewe.
With the brazen attack taking place just weeks into his term in office, residents from the region are keen on the government's strategy to deal with the vice of banditry, pending the appointment of an interior cabinet secretary. Gena Kirori, NTV.
All right, well, let's quickly now turn our focus to another life-threatening situation where President William Ruto says the government will mobilize teams and resources to respond to the drought that is devastating several parts of the country. Over 3 million people are now walking the wispy line between life and death as once fertile lands collapse to dust under the searing heat of the drought and food and water become scarce. NTV's Nina Shaban paints us a picture of the drought situation and the task ahead for the government in dealing with the recurring problem.
As if in a morbid parade, animal carcasses litter the dusty lands in Kenya's north. The grisly spectacle of dead or dying animals rotting beneath the scorching sun is the result of a prolonged drought, one of the worst in history, that has pushed the pastoral communities and the livestock they rely on to the brink of disaster. For many months, the rains have failed, leaving them a harvest of carcasses. Here in Mandera, life is slowly slipping away.
And diversity and reduce food intake by 29%. That is 108,735 of children under 5 years in Mandera face acute malnutrition. In addition, 4% and 3% of households scored poor or borderline for food consumption scores, respectively.
Since September last year, much of the country has received less than normal rainfall. The lack of rainfall has wiped out pastures and made food and water shortages worse. In Meru, much of the vegetation has turned to patches of brown stubble. The bread basket collapsed into a dust bowl, and now theirs is a world poised on the edge of destruction. It's a desperate battle between life and death that has pushed this community in Meru into making deadly choices. Hundreds of them scrambled for meat from a dead camel, but their only meal in days turned poisonous. 112 were rushed to hospital after complaining of stomach pains and diarrhea. 7 are still in hospital.
Niko njaa. Naona mtu siku 3 4 mtu ayaenda sokoni.
What we are doing, we are still trying to see whether there are some other patients who have been left behind and they are sick.
Drought in Kenya. It was officially declared a national disaster in September 2021 by the former Kenyan President Uhuru Kenyatta. As of November 2021, 7.9 million people, about 15.4% of the country's population, lacked sufficient food. According to the Kenyan government and the United Nations, the country is now in the grips of its worst drought in 40 years, with more than 4 million people facing food insecurity and 3.3 million not getting sufficient water to drink. Across the Horn of Africa, the figure leaps to 11.6 million. President William Ruto now faces one of his most difficult tasks, just 12 days into office, as life in Kenya's arid counties dries up and death closes in.
I have asked my deputy to put together the teams so that we can work on our drought situation that is threatening many people. We've arranged some food. We're working on with the governors on the ground and other leaders to make sure that no Kenyan dies because of hunger. We want to make sure that that does not happen.
The government has pledged food, water, and even cash to help alleviate the suffering. Nina Shaban, NTV.
And the president has vowed to push ahead with his plan to increase contributions to the National Social Security Fund, that is the NSSF, saying it is the only way to grow the country. The head of state acknowledged a court judgment that invalidated the increment, but added that the executive will work closely with Parliament to actualize proposals made by the courts. Kennedy Murithi, our senior political affairs reporter, has more.
The president, who hosted a Thanksgiving service at State House, Nairobi, has said he will pick up the matter on his proposed NSSF savings plan with Parliament. Ruto insists that the court ruling that halted plans to increase employee deductions to NSSF is just a small bump on the road.
I know there was a ruling this week by the court on matters to do with savings in our country. They have told us to do certain things, including to go back to the Senate so that we can proceed together. That we are going to do because savings is a must.
One of the reasons cited by the courts for throwing out the 2013 Act was non-involvement of the Senate, noting that the House of Parliament is a key stakeholder since the matter touches on counties.
I am very clear, I am very keen, and I'm sure we'll be working with our members of Parliament and members of Senate, National Assembly, so that we can provide the framework for Kenya to save, so that we can become good men and women and leave an inheritance for our children.
To President Ruto, the current savings plan makes no sense.
Everybody who works today in Kenya saves only 200 shillings every month. How much? Not 2,000. Even those who earn 500, 600, 1 million shillings, they save 200 shillings. And somebody has gone to say it should stay like that. That is not what savings is all about.
The president says the plan is to inculcate a savings culture among Kenyans and to transform the country's fortunes.
Those who are employed, their employers should also match their savings. And those who are not employed, the government of Kenya will save with them. If any Kenyan saves an amount, the government of Kenya will give them money equivalent to a percentage of their saving to become part of their savings.
Ruto's sentiments have been echoed by Central Organization of Trade Union Secretary General Francis Atwoli, who has implored on the NSSF to not appeal the decision by the courts on the fund.
The best way, because our president, our current president, President William Samoei Ruto, has said that he wants to see us paying more money as our savings at the NSSF. He's in tandem, he's in agreement with what we want as NSSF. So what NSSF and the board, including the minister, should do is to have a delegation to see the president. The president will have to mobilize members of parliament, and they will be able to amend this to bring in this act in accordance with the ruling of the court.
Ruto also called on the church to pray for the Kenya Kwanza promise to Kenyans and how to implement it, reviving the economy and peace.
We are chained to many debts. 65% of all the taxes we collect, we use to pay debt. That's why I'm asking you to pray for our economy.
You need to pray for Dr. Ruto. The country he has inherited is not a very sweet story. It's a difficult story. Work has to be done.
President Ruto hosted over 100 clergymen and women who prayed for State House. Kennedy Muredhi, NTV.
And residents of Busia County have been urged to remain vigilant following the outbreak of the Ebola virus in Uganda. Busia Governor Paul Otuoma says that his government has put in place measures that will ensure the safety of the people as they go about their day-to-day operations. At the border crossings in and out of Uganda, health officials have been carrying out temperature checks on those crossing into and out of the country. This comes as Uganda recorded an Ebola outbreak this month with a rising number of deaths due to the virus.
Wana pale ile electronic screening ambayo inachukua the first thing kama kuna symptoms ni mambo ya temperature ambao wanachukua hapo, alafu ikiwa temperature ambayo iko juu zaidi wamenieleza kwamba wana isolate those particular individuals and do maybe further tests on them.
All right. right, and with that, time to get into what's in the dailies. But before that, allow me to introduce my panelists for this morning. Will take us through the dailies and, of course, more discussions on what is happening politically in the country. We do have Godfrey Osotsi, the Senator, Vihiga County. A very good morning, Karibu Sana. And Edwin Mugo, Member of Parliament, Madhioya constituency. Karibu Sana, very good morning. As well as Professor Alfred Omenya, governance expert, not new, very familiar face on AM Live. Karibu Sana, good morning, Prof. You're well? All right, so we begin with what's on the Daily Nation, just picking up from the last story, Ebola next door. That's on page 7. So more than 5 days since the declaration of Ebola in Uganda, Kenyan officials continue to drag their feet with minimal screening at the Busia and Malaba border posts, even as the deadly virus spreads from the Mubende ground zero into Kampala and claims 20 victims and counting. This is our Health Watch this morning. I'll begin with you, Senator. Do you think we're ready to deal with this issue?
From what I'm hearing, or from what we are reading, clearly we are not prepared to deal with the Ebola crisis. And I think the government, through the Ministry of Health, should move with speed and ensure that all measures to control the spread of Ebola are in place. It is very saddening that we are seeing very little screening at critical border points, especially in Busia. And I think it will be important for enhanced measures to ensure that we have screening, proper screening of all the people entering and going out of the country, so that we don't get this disease spread to various towns in Kenya.
And I mean, just coming out from a COVID-19 pandemic,
yes,
which we're not clearly out of, this will be quite paramount for the government.
It will be. And we have seen reports that over 20 people have died in Kampala.
Correct.
And you know, from Kampala to Busia is not a very long distance. In fact, from Kampala to Busia, it's a shorter distance compared to Busia, Nairobi.
And so, I mean, your county as well is just adjacent.
Yeah, my county, Vihiga, is quite near.
Right.
So we are worried about that. And I think I've seen in the news, the governor of Busia, Dr. Otuoma, is trying to do something. But we have not seen the Ministry of Health coming out strongly to try and put in place measures to stop the spread of Ebola. Right. So I think it is up to the government of Kenya to show the same level of commitment they had on COVID-19. We want to see it on Ebola so that we don't have this disease coming to Kenya.
Do not find ourselves in that deep, dark ditch. Prof, what do you take of this? I mean, Ebola just next door?
Yes. No, thanks, Zainab, and thanks, Waheshimiwa. Yeah, definitely we expect the ministry to have moved with a lot more speed, given that, number one, Ebola is not really very new, and Kenya government, the ministry has been part and parcel of fight of Ebola in other countries. So it's a disease that's well understood, and it's a disease that is devastating, right, as Mheshimiwa Osotsi has highlighted there. What one would have expected was, you know, the ministry to just roll out the protocols immediately. You know, not leaving this to counties. Yes, counties, you know, can help, but they really don't have the capacity, right, both the technical capacity and the financial muscle to respond to this.
All right. I mean, Edwin, I know your county is a bit further from this, but it is still not outside the scope of what might be quite a big crisis in the country if we do not deal with this. We're looking at, you know, a number of issues, and we're seeing a lot of advisories to the counties. Perhaps what would be your take on this?
Yeah, thank you, Zainab, and thank you, Prof. and Mheshimiwa. What I would say about Ebola, I think the government of Kenya is well prepared for Ebola, given the experience that they have had on COVID-19. Probably Ebola is not new. We are just lucky that it has not hit Kenya. It has hit the neighboring countries, the DRC, Congo, and Uganda. So for someone who has traveled recently, we are still required to fill those forms whether you have visited Ebola-related areas. So I'm very sure the government of Kenya, through the Ministry of Health, they are well aware of the threats of Ebola.
But we should be seeing more, at least on our border points.
Yeah, and the disruption that it can cause on the economy of Kenya.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. So let's see what's on the second page of the Daily Nation. The day Moi dropped Omamo from cabinet for praising Jaramogi. This is just a quick story you'll perhaps find interesting. In his memoir, Omamo lays out the various schemes that politicians, including from his own home district, regularly employed as they sought to undermine him and his work. It's, of course, a book that documents the life of that pioneer technocrat. Just moving ahead, on the fourth page of the Daily Nation, debt burden on expensive loans leaves Kenya in a financial mess. The government only able to borrow about 200 billion after Parliament capped the country's debt ceiling at 10 trillion shillings. Now, debts procured from multilateral markets attract lower interest rates compared to bilateral and commercial loans. We do have China, which is the biggest bilateral contributor to Kenya's 8.6 trillion public debt, with the International Development Association topping the list of multilateral lenders. Now, this comes as data from the Parliamentary Budget Office indicates that Kenya's debt stock is projected to hit 9.8 trillion by June next year, as the country's insatiable hunger to borrow more is expected to remain unchanged with the coming in of a new administration. Senator, I mean, we are already in this huge financial crisis, you know. It is a mess, actually, as the Daily Nation puts it. But you look, we have a new administration in place, and there are expenses expected to happen there. I mean, you have infrastructure, you have, you know, I mean, all these things. What do you make of this? Where are we in terms of, you know, fiscal state, and where do you think we are heading?
Well, from the newspaper story that you've just read out, clearly we are only remaining with 200 billion to be borrowed.
Correct.
Which is not a good sum of money compared to what this government should do, based on their manifesto and the promises they have made. So really, it's a crisis, but as you are aware, the Kenya Kwanza administration made a raft of promises on debt management. They talked about renegotiation with the lenders. They talked about them not borrowing anymore. So we want to see their actions, and we are waiting to see what they are going to do to manage the debt crisis. They also promised that they will not go to Parliament to heighten the ceiling, and clearly you can see their promises will require to be financed.
But
so
that is likely to happen.
Yeah, they will require to finance their promises. So really it's a challenge, and we are asking the Kenya Kwanza administration, led by President William Ruto, that now the ball is in your court. You made promises, deal with the problem that we have at hand. And Kenyans want to see the debt problem resolved without blaming the former administration, because they were part and parcel of the former administration. So we really want to see action, and concrete action from the Kenya Kwanza administration on the issue of debt management. I think by now, President William Ruto should be having a cabinet in place. We need to know who is the Treasury CS, and the Treasury CS must quickly start the process of renegotiation of these expensive loans, and also have a clear plan on how they're going to manage the debt crisis.
Right, but I think that slot was, according to the pre-election agreement, would fall under Musalia Mudavadi, your former boss. You know, so because there was that structure of him getting the prime cabinet secretary position.
Well, I don't know about that, and for us in the opposition, we are not keen to know who will get what. What we are interested is we want to see them implement their promises.
Right.
You remember they promised that they will get Mama Mbogas in cabinet. We are waiting to see that. They promised us they are going to get borders in cabinet. And they also promised that half of the cabinet is going to be women. So really, we are asking them to start by giving us a cabinet, because we are seeing a raft of roadside declarations which require cabinet interventions. And we are wondering, where is these discussions around some of these very strong policy directions that the government is taking, without a cabinet and without intervention of parliament.
Right. Let's hear from Bwana Mugo. I mean, all these things that are happening, we're looking at the debt crisis in Kenya. This is the burden. I mean, it leaves the government with the room to only borrow 200 billion to finance this fiscal deficit in the 2023-2024 budget, after Parliament, of course, capped the country's debt ceiling to 10 trillion shillings.
Yeah, clearly we are in a debt crisis. That is a fact. I think even the president addressed it yesterday, saying that the debts have reached, unmanageable levels. Maybe just to give you some figures, every day we collect 7 billion in taxes with KRA collects 7 billion. But if you remember, former President Uhuru Kenyatta told us that we lose 2 billion on corruption. So 7 billion, you deduct 2 billion, you are left with 5 billion.
But we have a new administration.
Yeah, now once you are left with this 5 billion, we use 3 billion to pay debt.
But why factor in the 2 billion shillings when we have a completely new administration that is pushing forth the anti-corruption agenda?
Now, that is why I'm saying, for us to be able to manage this debt, we have to slay the dragon of corruption, so that this 2 billion comes back to the public coffers. We also have to address the paid-in bills. You know, this paid-in bill has been a nightmare for this country. You know, from the previous administration of Jubilee, of Uhuru Kenyatta, we have paid-in bills of almost 1 trillion Kenya shillings. We have projects worth 9 trillion that are pending. So clearly, and Dr. William Samoei Ruto, the president, said he would want to continue with some of these projects. He would want also to achieve what he promised on the manifesto. We have the Hustler Fund. We have all these things that were promised by Kenya Kwanza government. So if we slay down the dragon of corruption.
But will it be enough to actually manage to finance all these promises that were in the Kenya Kwanza manifesto, that many Kenyans are very hopeful that it is the land, the promised land, that we've reached there?
Yeah, Zainab, it is possible. The president has been in the government for even less than 30 days. So as Mheshimiwa is saying, the cabinet will be formed, principal secretaries will be appointed, and within the 100 days, I think we will start seeing some action on some of the promises that were promised by Kenya Kwanza government.
Okay, let's hear from Prof.
Yes, I think the challenge the new administration has is that, they've been pointing fingers, which is okay, since they were the official opposition before Honorable Sosi and team took over. Yes, so what has been missing really for me, as an observer from the outside, is more the big picture now. We're saying, let's shift gears from the critique. That's always the easier bit. It's always easy to see what the other administration is not doing right. And indeed, even ourselves as professionals, experts, and so on, were concerned about this particular debt. But I think it's time we started hearing the big picture in terms of how government intends to deal with this.
Correct.
What are we going to do? Are we going to slow down expenditure for some time? Are we going to restructure debts? Which ones? Are we talking to bilateral lenders? But then what is the long-term game plan? Yeah, because it concerns me that our only concern is that we can't borrow more.
So what else can we do?
Exactly, and this is a sort of serious restructuring of the economy that we expect the current administration to do, so that in say 5 years' time or 10 years' time, we can actually be financing infrastructure from taxes, not from debt. That is actually quite important, because eventually that is what removes the competition by government. While government is competing with the locals from borrowing in the banks. We are saying we need a situation where government is borrowing less and less, and we're able to fund some of these critical projects with their own taxpayers' monies, so that money is available for the ordinary person, including that hustler, the mamambogas and everyone, you know, to actually borrow, because these are the people who grow the economy. Government is not in the business of you know, economic development or even economic activity. They're just enablers. Yes, I mean, if you're competing with government outside there, the terms become unfavorable. In fact, this escalates all across, including even the value of the shilling itself in terms of forex. Yes, so we need this clarity that, okay, fine, if you're going to borrow more, for how long, and how are we going to plateau, how are we going to come down? Eventually, what is the end game? And for me, the end game must be a situation where we are funding our own major critical infrastructure development from our taxes, so that debt money is actually available for the private sector, for the private investors, and so on, so that interest rates, you know, can actually come down, so that forex, the Kenya shilling stabilizes, and eventually, you know, so that the ordinary mwananchi has more money in their pockets.
All right. I mean, Senator, you had the president in New York the other day at the United Nations General Assembly asking international lenders to extend debt relief. Of course, this is after the aftershocks of the COVID-19. You have the climate crisis. Look at the drought situation in the country now. Is this maybe perhaps going to likely help us if that happens?
Well, you know, debt relief comes with conditionalities.
Right.
And the lenders are likely to give conditions, which, in my view, it's really going to put a strain on the Kenya Kwanza administration. But that could be one of the approaches. But as Professor says, we need to
sustainable? That's the question.
A tangible, sustainable plan on how they're going to deal with the debt crisis. That is really the most important thing this administration will do. I have had to look at their manifesto, and I think their manifesto, it will require a lot of financial resources to implement their manifesto. One way is to implement it through taxes, and as you're aware, the taxes are not enough, which means they will have to increase the tax, or they will go back to Parliament and ask for
a review
of the ceiling to 12 trillion, which is something they told us they were not going to do. So really, we really are waiting to see how they're going to deal with this issue of debt crisis, given the factors around it and their raft of promises they made to Kenyans.
All right. So this just a quick run through of the numbers. Country has a high GDP to debt to GDP ratio. So this is what we're looking at. The country's current debt stock includes 4.269 billion in domestic borrowing, with foreign debts accounting for 4.295 billion shillings. That is the numbers we have here. So 8 trillion is the debt stock, 68%, that is the debt to GDP ratio. And that's what we're looking at right now. So very quickly as we move on as well, still on the Daily Nation, legal requirement. Houses are required to concur on bills that affect counties before they can become law. But Senate National Assembly warned against getting into supremacy wars. Finance Cabinet Secretary says fighting between the two houses of Parliament has delayed crucial legislation. While the supremacy battles between the Senate and National Assemblies have done the same. But to back this assertion, Finance Cabinet Secretary Ukur Yatani says the differences between the two houses were to blame for the delay of the legal instrument through which equalization fund allocations are to be transferred to counties. The equalization fund, of course, is an affirmative action legal instrument that seeks to improve certain services in marginalized counties to bring the quality of those services to the level generally enjoyed by the rest of the county. And we do have some of the acts there from the Public Finance Equalization Fund Administration Regulations 2021, which had been adopted by Parliament to facilitate allocation and transfer of funds. That's according to CS Yatani. I'll begin with you, Bwana Mugo. I mean, you are inside the House, and we do have the Senate, the National Assembly. It's not the first time we've had of, supremacy battles between the two houses of Parliament. What way forward can we look at when we're looking at, the issues, especially on the issue of the equalization fund?
Well, I think it was there. The supremacy was between the National Assembly and Senate. Number one, it was because of the functions were not that clear. Because, as you know, the Senate came into being in the year 2013. It's barely 10 years old. Then also there was competition. In the overlapping of the functions. You find that in Parliament they pass some laws, but National Assembly feels that they don't need to go through the Senate, and vice versa. But now, since we have the new speakers, Moses Masika Wetangula for National Assembly, and Amason Kingi for Senate. I think they promised during their speeches when they were elected as speakers that the two houses have to work together for the benefit of common mwananchi. Yeah.
Senator, are we likely to see some harmony coming out? Because now we have a completely new, leadership within the houses.
Well, we are just from the retreat in Naivasha, where that issue was discussed at length.
Right.
And I'm beginning to see a new attitude from the two speakers, Amason Kingi for Senate and Wetangula for National Assembly. And given that Honorable Wetangula has been a senator, understands the problem even better. So we want to see a lot of concurrency between the two speakers on matters involving the two houses. And I think if the two speakers are speaking to each other, are consulting, we shouldn't have any problem. You've seen that some bills were declared unconstitutional by the court. We do not want to get to that situation. Correct. And my view is that every other piece of legislation affects counties. And we want to see a situation whereby every other bill that comes to either house has to go to the other house, so that National Assembly and Senate, they are all involved in the passage of the bills.
All right.
That will resolve the problem. But for that to happen, we must have the two speakers speaking to each other and working in harmony. Okay. So I have gotten feelings that that is going to happen between Weta and Kingi.
Right.
And I think as senators, we have a new brand of senators who are eager to ensure that we sustain the efforts that our two speakers are going to do.
Right. All right. On that note, just have to take a very short break here on AM Live. You can keep the conversation going. We are on our social media platforms. The hashtag to use, of course, is AM Live NTV at NTV Kenya. Zainab Ismail will be sampling some of your views. We'll be back in just a moment. Stay with us.
Nation FM is the home of good music. We want to find out how many people in this building believe just that. So we're going to do a sing-along challenge, and I want you to come with me. Let's go check it out.
Wapi tofauti yako na sina noma naye. Hey, oh, oh, oh.
This is the cutting edge of medical technology in South Africa. Now, these surgeons behind me are using the Da Vinci surgical system in order to do a prostate operation on this patient. Now, the system has very nimble, sensitive arms which can get to parts of the body which are difficult for surgeons to ordinarily reach.
Smart tech is back.
This season, we feature African innovators seeking to solve climate-related challenges in Africa.
I produce avocado oil. When I was doing research on avocado oil, I figured that I would need an efficient dryer to dry the fruit. And we designed a machine that was very basic, that processed around 50, that dried around 50 kgs of fruit in a day.
Crystal Rivers Residences along Mombasa Road comprises 3-bedroomed apartments, 3-bedroomed and 4-bedroom townhouses. The only mixed-use development close to the Nairobi Expressway. Easy payment plans available. Terms and conditions apply. Call 0757 620 202.
As e-learning grows and becomes an everyday part of our lives, integrating cyber safety to learner offerings has become just as crucial as the curriculum.
We run a club called WizKids Africa. When your child is in kindergarten, we will help them learn how to be safe.
And we're hearing that from parents. How do I even start this conversation with my child? We've never talked about the internet.
This month, we explore the ways and means that EdTech can be a key enabler for internet safety for learners in Kenya with our new moderator, Moses Kemibaro. Join us as we interrogate these and other online safety issues Monday at 4:30 p.m. East African Time on NTV.
Hi, thanks for staying with us. You're watching M Live on NTV, and lots to have a conversation about, at least what's been happening in the past couple of days. I am with Vihiga Senator Godfrey Osotsi. I do also have Mathioya, Member of Parliament Edwin Mugo, and Professor Alfred Omenya, a governance expert for today. Just moving on still on what's in the dailies, and moving forward to a conversation that has suddenly gripped the nation right now. Declare drought national disaster, Ruto told. Crisis devolved unit needs at least 75 million for water tracking, fuel and borehole repairs and maintenance. So this is the Mandera Governor Mohamed Khalifa wants President William Ruto to declare the ongoing drought a national disaster, saying half of the population of his county is affected. Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua is this week expected to chair a meeting to address drought intervention measures. Well, looking at some of the reports here, the governor said that despite concerted efforts by his administration, the county is experiencing acute food and water shortages, malnutrition, limited pastures and reduced livestock prices. According to the Mandera Livestock Department, between January and September, 365,283 heads of cattle, more than 160,000 camels, 29,000 donkeys died due to drought. This is just between January and September. And at least 452,000 heads of cattle and 386,000 camels and 1.3 million goats require urgent supplementary feeds, treatment and water across the county. Now, this is just in Mandera County, but that situation is replicated in about 23 counties that are in that particular state. Prof, I mean, drought, should we be now declaring this a national disaster? This is the worst drought we're facing in 40 years.
Yes, I think this is something that, you know, is a shame, really, for a country like Kenya that is we're discussing here is a middle-income country. We do have systems and structures for disasters, and we know those disasters, and we have very clear projections when the disasters are going to happen. So this drought, has it caught us by surprise? Mm-hmm. No, it hasn't. Did we think that there'd be no drought and other disasters in the country? No, we didn't. We knew it was actually coming. But we have structures. We have NDMA, the National Disaster Management Authority, mm-hmm. And for every county we actually have disaster funds, which is actually designated funds that is calculated as a percentage of the county allocation. I think it stands at about 3%. So what is the problem? What is the issue? Mm-hmm. In fact, for me, I think at the center of this is poor governance. Mm-hmm. That's just what it is. Mm-hmm. We have extremely poor governance, and we have extremely irresponsible governance when it comes to these particular issues of disasters, particularly recurrent ones like the droughts. some of this, the counties themselves, and of course national government knew the drought was coming. What preparations, what mechanisms did we put in place to support these people? What is our government doing anyway? I mean, if a Kenyan in the 21st century can die of hunger, this is just simply not acceptable. Let's look at this for what it is. It is actually just bad behavior. And we have this situation where when it comes to matters of disaster, we actually rely on foreigners to deal with these sort of issues.
But
yet we have county governments with budgets, we have national government with budgets, we have people employed, we have authorities. We need to start taking these institutions to task. What are they doing? Why aren't they delivering? Why are they stuck at particular levels? Why do they need to be helped? Is it impossible for the fellows who sit in those institutions to tell us that we are overwhelmed? This is a situation the country is going to face. This is our plan. These are the budgets that we actually had, and it won't be enough, and we need support. So why are we always being caught, flat-footed on these sort of issues? It is bad governance, and in fact, we need to actually call people out.
But is it just governance, or we should also look at a growing crisis, which is the climate change crisis that Kenya is also facing? Because some have attributed what we're looking at, this prolonged drought, as also majorly being contributed by the fact that the climate issue is something that is affecting us, not just as a country, but globally as well.
Zainab, I work on this. I'm the one who set up the African Union Climate Change Center. And I'm the one who developed the 25-year strategies on climate change. Extreme weather events and climate change impacts, again, has been simulated very well. We know the challenges that come with that. Of course, there's still quite a bit of unpredictability around that. But remember, drought is not just caused by climate change. Normal extreme weather, in fact, that's what we call climate variability. Even when there was no climate change, droughts and floods were there. There were floods in Noah's time, and there was drought in the times of Pharaoh. So you can't actually come and say that okay, fine, we are caught flat-footed on this. The question we are asking, whether caused by climate change or not, is very simple. Didn't we foresee this drought? Has it caught us unawares? What did we do about it? Weather caused, regardless of what the cause is. Are we shocked that there's drought in Kenya? We knew these droughts are going to happen. Just like we also know, come March, April next year, there'll be floods. What are we doing about these things? These things we know will happen. They've been worsened, of course, by climate change, but we know they will happen. Even in the absence of climate change, there's something we call climate variability and extreme weather events. Those things will continue happening anyway. So for me, the cause is neither here nor there. The issue for me is very, very simple. That what have we done as a country to ensure that we've got effective response to these issues when they happen, regardless of the cause?
Is it a lack of legislation, a framework? Is it a policy issue? Or is it just,
This is the point that I was actually coming to. In fact, Kenya has, we actually have a climate change act.
Right.
We do have that is meant to look at this sort of impacts. These things have been highlighted even in Vision 2030. We do have a National Disaster Management Authority. We do have disaster management frameworks at county level, complete with funds. And that's partly why I'm saying we need to take stock of these institutions and those who are seated there, and what it is that they actually do with the taxpayers' money.
Right.
First and foremost, as we fix this problem. Otherwise, we'll keep looking like fools before the rest of the world, that every time we appear there with a begging bowl, to feed our people. It's also about the dignity of our people.
Okay, let's hear from Senator Godfrey. I mean, first of all, maybe you can give us an assessment of how your county is doing in terms of this, and I mean, what is the bottom line? Why are we in this state perennially? Is it lack of proper preparations, like Prof is alluding to?
Well, this is a very grave situation, and I think we need to separate the issues that we need to handle as a country. I think the immediate thing is to ensure that humanitarian issues are dealt with. And I think today the Deputy President will be having a meeting with the governors in those affected counties.
Yes.
So what we want to see is the government providing humanitarian support to the affected communities in terms of provision of water, food, and any other support that they need. We have seen in the papers that people lack food to the extent that they are even eating dead camel meat, which has created a health crisis out of it.
That's
so
County,
we
yes.
want the government to prioritize humanitarian support to the affected. At the same time, we also want long-term measures to be taken, as Professor has alluded to. I also ask the same questions. What is happening? Because we have proper systems in place. We have monitoring mechanism. Drought does not just happen. There are monitoring systems that take place. I am aware that the Drought Monitoring Authority conducts various monitoring. We have meteorological department that also monitors climate change. We also have even satellite program that does that. So we really want to know why this is looking like a new issue, because almost every year we have a drought situation, and we keep on saying declare it a national disaster. I think part of the problem that we have is corruption. Even now, all these chorus around declaration of this as a disaster, it's all driven by corruption. Because, you know, once a situation like this has been declared a disaster, then it means there will be single sourcing, various government agencies, especially ones tasked with handling matters like this. They will be involved in procurement of items without going through competitive processes. And you find that food items, clothing, and many other things will be procured, and people will make money out of it. So that explains why the problem keeps on recurring, because people don't want to have a permanent solution to it. They want every year to create a situation where they will engage in corruption. And I think that's the biggest problem that we are having in this country. So I hope the new administration will quickly move and help us get a solution to this, and not just a temporary solution, but a permanent solution that every year when we have this situation, we don't want to see Kenyans dying of starvation. We don't want to see loss of livestock. We don't want to see a situation that Kenya lack water. It is ironical that where I come from, it's too much rain now.
But it's a, but you
too
know,
much
it's a
rain,
situation
but
we're
on the other side of the country, people are lacking
across
water.
the Horn of Africa as well. So we can't say that Kenya is facing this, you know, as an entity alone. I mean, so this is a situation that we're seeing across many other countries in Africa and the globe as well.
Yes, it is, but the point is, this is not the first time we are experiencing it. We have had drought situation before. In fact, if I remember during President Moi's time, we had one of the worst drought situations. Even during Kibaki's time, we had one of the worst drought situations. The question that Professor and I are asking, what mechanism, permanent mechanisms have we put in place to ensure that when this occurs, we have some remedies in place to deal with the situation, so that we don't see people losing their lives or livestock losses here and there. So we really want a permanent solution. And I think the Deputy President is going to have a meeting today. And unfortunately, I don't think he's the right person to lead that meeting, because already we have seen his ideas on climate change do not resonate with the agenda that he's going to address today.
And we're going to come back to that in just a moment. Let's hear from Edwin on the same. And I'm reading here the National Drought Management Authority Act 2016, which mandates the National Drought Management Authority to exercise overall coordination over all matters relating to drought risk management, and to establish mechanisms either on its own or with other stakeholders that will end drought emergencies in Kenya. But that is yet to happen.
Yeah, I mean, First of all, you know, drought is a national security issue, because you know with this drought, especially the pastoralists with the animals, they move to the farmers or places where people have planted crops. Then you find that there is conflict, you know, between the pastoralists and or the herders and the farmers. Number two, it is a fact that the rainfall season has failed for almost 4 consecutive seasons. So we were about to experience this drought. Now the question is, when this drought comes, what actions do the government take? Because the NDMA is an institution of the government. If they are not adequately funded, then they will not be able to react on time.
But is the issue the funding? Is that the issue?
The issue is funding, of course, because we need money to be able to respond to some of these disasters. Number two, I think Kenya, as the Prof was saying, as a middle-income country, we cannot continue, you know, relying on rain-fed agriculture. We need to move. I mean, even in Egypt and Israel, those are deserts, but you will never hear of drought and famine. We have to agree, in Kenya, 70% of the landmass in Kenya is ASAD, arid and semi-arid areas. So we need to move from rain-fed agriculture and start thinking, you know, of irrigation and so forth. Because we have permanent rivers. We have the River Athi, River Tana. We have enough water actually in Kenya. It's just a matter of making sure that we use our water wisely and conserving this water so that we can be able to mitigate some of these things. And maybe Zainab, just to let you know, SDG number 2, Sustainable Development Goal number 2, talks of, you know, ensuring that the world free of hunger and poverty. And if you look at all the SDGs that you know the world intends to achieve by 2030, water is core. Actually, water is core is linked to all these SDGs. So if we manage the issue of water, you know, when we have rains, when we have floods, we retain this water, as Prof was saying, because we are going to have floods, then people will be displaced, then all this water will go to waste.
Okay.
If we start, you know, retaining this water, moving away from rain-fed agriculture, then we'll be able to solve this issue of drought.
Well, talking of water and agriculture, you have Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua, who, like we've said just a few moments ago, he will be holding and chairing a meeting to discuss the urgent climate change interventions just days after he announced the return of the Shamba system, which was banned because of the harm it caused to the forest. The meeting was ordered by President William Ruto, who said leaders will need to table urgent interventions to curb the adverse effects of drought, which has seen more than 942,000 children and, you know, 134,000 pregnant and lactating women suffer acute malnutrition. And let's get that report. I hope Arnold can be able to just bring us that report. Now, the Deputy President sparked a debate with his proclamation that the government plans to reintroduce this farming in forests, or the Shamba system as we now know. Environmentalists argue that while it might not be entirely a bad idea, it could be a window for opportunists to encroach into more forest reserves. NTV's Sydney Chazima examines the viability and shortcomings of the Shamba system in this report. Watch, then we come back.
The controversial Plantation Establishment and Livelihood Improvement Scheme, otherwise known as Shamba system, could be on its way back.
Hii serikali ni yenu. Tumetoa order. Wananchi wapewe nafasi walime msitu.
The system was banned in 2002 by the late President Mwai Kibaki after people with commercial farming interests took advantage of it.
There are communities in this country, over the years they have been growing maize in forests. The only challenge is that they have been growing it commercially, leading to a point that the Kenya Forest Board stopped this process from happening.
From the Deputy President's point of view, this system would help fill up the country's food basket.
Sasa iko haja gani kukataza watu kulima mahindi alafu tunaenda kutoa mahindi ng'ambo? Ni ujinga, si ujinga.
But for this to happen, large-scale commercial maize farming would have to be reintroduced, which could mean taking the country back to the very reasons why the Shamba system had to be done away with. The Shamba system was originally designed to allow agricultural activities in plantation forests. In collaboration with the Kenya Forest Services, communities will be given a small parcel of land, close to an acre or less, and tree seedlings that they would plant alongside their crops. The communities would in turn surrender these small parcels of land after the trees have grown for a period of 3 years. No farming was allowed in indigenous forests. This system was meant to save the forests from the axe. But as plunder of the country's last forests continued, the government in 2018 imposed a moratorium on logging and timber harvesting in all public and community forests. The moratorium drew criticism from sawmillers and timber product merchants who complained the ban had caused massive job losses. The government now appears keen to reverse that policy.
Iko waziri alikuja hapo akafunga. Huwezi chukua hata matawi ya kupika. Matawi inaoza. Sijui watu wengine akili ilienda wapi.
Forest conservation has been a politically charged subject, going by the raging debate over the conservation of the Mau, Chepalungu and the Chetambe Hills forests, to name a few. And as this new debate takes on life, Dr. Isaac Kalu of the Green Thinking Action Party reckons there should be consensus before reintroducing the Shamba system. The government will also have to equip the Kenya Forest Service financially and with manpower to enforce it. And even more critical, will those entrusted to farm in the forests maintain their discipline, bearing in mind the looming threat of climate change?
Kenya depletes 150 million trees on an annual basis for energy use. So for us to achieve a 1% forest cover, we need to plant 730 million trees. So you can imagine any effort that slows down the process of increasing forest cover, we are going to end up depleting what we have, which will definitely mess us up.
Sydney Chazima, NTV.
All right, so those are remarks by the Deputy President, which has suddenly created quite the buzz and received criticism from different stakeholders in the country. Allow me to begin with Professor. I mean, your first reaction to hearing about, the government mulling, plans to reintroduce, the Shamba system back into the country. What do you make of that?
In fact, when I heard about this, I thought it was a joke. It is insane, actually. Remember, this Shamba system is not new. It has been there from independence,
Correct.
actually. And Moi government that was meant to have been a pretty inefficient government banned it. The Shamba system wasn't banned for the first time during Kibaki's time. It was banned in Moi's time. And then it was reintroduced later. The Kibaki government gets in, I think that was around 2003, they banned the Shamba system again. Why was it being banned? The late Professor Wangari Maathai came in and campaigned against this. I was the first chairman of the Kenya Climate Change Working Group, and this is one of the issues that we are very clear about, that we must not have the Shamba system. Why? It is not because of the theory of the Shamba system. The theory of the Shamba system is perfect. As people do their Shambas, they plant the trees and they move on. But it's because it has never worked in practice. What has happened in practice is that people first get these huge chunks of land. They plant the trees and they cut those same trees that they planted in the first instance. You get commercial guys getting into the forests, actually, to do commercial agriculture, as it actually were. And it's been proven that because of that poor management of that Shamba system, what we end up with is actually loss of our forest cover, not an increase in the forest cover. In theory, yes, I know people are saying, people will plant trees, we are talking as if we don't know Kenyans. Who are these Kenyans who are planting trees, then after 3 years they move away, and they say, now let us let the trees grow. Those Kenyans will remain there, and in fact they'll demand more of that forest land. We also know corruption issues in Kenya that allowed big commercial players to be given forest land. We also know, again, corruption that will allow encroachment into indigenous forests using the excuse that the Shamba system is actually being put in place. I don't think there's any mechanism this government can put in place unless it's divine intervention that will actually make the Shamba system work. For me, it's very simple. It is this simple. We need to increase our forest cover. Let us give, if you're discussing forestry and climate change, let us give Kenya Forestry Services the resources it needs to plant those trees, and let nobody get into our forests. That is the first bit. If we need to fix agriculture, let's leave forests alone. Kenya is arable. The entire country, in those areas we're talking about in Mandera, these guys can actually grow crops. We have enough normal land where we need to be growing our crops there, and also ensuring that we don't have degradation of those same lands, leave alone the forest lands.
All right.
That is the only chance we have of increasing our forest cover. The smallholder can actually be assisted to do agroforestry in their land, so that we keep increasing our forest cover. Coming with this excuse that the Shamba system will sort out our agricultural problem is so misplaced. In fact, I thought that Kenya Kwanza had some semblance of a plan around agriculture and food security. And if this is what Kenya Kwanza has, it worries me. It worries me in a fundamental way.
All right. Let's hear from Senator.
Well, for me, it's quite a very, very unfortunate. Those kind of statements coming from the second highest in command in the country. And my simple advice to Kenya Kwanza administration is that let them settle down, avoid all these excitements, all these bravados, and sit down and constitute a government. As we are speaking now, there is no government, because the definition of a government is a president, deputy president, and the cabinet. There is no cabinet. Who is making these decisions? A decision like a change of policy to Shamba system policy requires the intervention of cabinet. There is no cabinet. They have been making a lot of roadside declarations which require the intervention of cabinet. So my advice to them is that they need to stop all these bravados, all these excitement, sit down, constitute a government where people can sit, reason together, and agree on a policy position before it is communicated to the public. And I want to agree with the professor that really, if this is how the Kenya Kwanza administration is going to deal with agriculture, then we are in for a big shock. Because looking at their very beautiful proposals on how they are going to promote food production, it really is out of tune with what they promise Kenyans. And I also want to reiterate that this also confirms that maybe Honorable Rigathi is not ready for the role that he's been given by Kenyans. Because really, you cannot make that kind of statement without consulting the relevant institution. We have seen Kalua. Kalua belongs to Kenya Kwanza coalition, having an alternative view. I saw a tweet from my colleague, senator, neighboring county, Boni Khalware, disagreeing with Rigathi's position on Shamba system. So really, we want to tell the Kenya Kwanza administration, please avoid all these bravados, all this excitement, and sit down, constitute a government. Because you do not have a government as we speak now. We only have two individuals, the president and the deputy. And they are making huge declarations without intervention of parliament. You saw the other day, they made a declaration about the port of Mombasa, and nothing has happened. Because it was made prematurely without intervention by a relevant organization, including KPA itself. You have seen the fertilizer crisis mess that they have put us in. To the extent of spending money. Who approved that money? Was there a parliament to approve that money? There was no parliament.
Okay.
Yes, they have a chance to get money, emergency funds, as provided in the constitution. But the question is, was the budget committee involved? And where was the budget committee? Because we don't have a parliament yet. So really, I want to advise the Kenya Kwanza administration, sit down, constitute a government, and let us see you implementing the promises you made to Kenyans, especially the 100-day promises. On another note, you have seen the effort that has been made in Mau Forest as a result of the sacrifice by Honorable Raila Odinga, who ended up losing political support in Rift Valley. As a result of that conservation effort, we are seeing the problem that had started, the drought concerns that had started happening downstream the Mau, have now been addressed.
All right.
So all those gains, the Kenya Kwanza administration, they want to retard all those gains and take us back to where we had started.
Well, let's
so
hear
it's
from
quite unfortunate that this government is out of tune with the reality, out of tune with the international convention, and out of tune with what it needs to do as far as its implementation of its own manifesto is concerned.
Let's hear from Edwin. Even with that, you know, you have other, you know, people welcoming that move. I'll give you an example. Of course, this is someone from your team, who's the Nandi Senator Samson Cherargei, saying the Shamba system will, according to his own words, accelerate 10% forest cover, which is in line with the climate change policies. I'm not so sure about that. Maybe Prof can give us an idea of that. But he also says it will ensure food security, therefore bringing down the cost of living. But where do we draw the line?
Yeah, I think first of all, maybe as the senator is saying, I think there is government, because the president said that the cabinet secretaries, the previous cabinet secretaries, should continue until the new ones are appointed. Even the principal secretaries, we have them. But going to the deputy president remarks, for me, I think they were taken out of context, because you see, and that is why the president has called for a meeting today morning, and it will be led by the deputy president, that all the stakeholders will be invited for this meeting.
But was it perhaps a blunder to perhaps make these remarks before having this meeting, because this is a policy issue?
You know, if you listen to the president when he was addressing the United Nations General Assembly, he said that climate change or climate issues will be part of his administration, and that is why when he came back, he tasked the deputy president to have a meeting with all the stakeholders, because as the Prof is saying, as the senator is saying, there are pros and cons of the Shamba system, and that is why we need to invite experts to discuss and see the way forward. For now, you know, as you are saying, there are people who are saying, you know, this can work, others are saying it cannot work, but I'm very sure as a Kenya Kwanza government that we are going to come up with a solution to the
But is Shamba system the solution?
No, that was a proposal, and that is, it was proposed. Now it will be under discussion.
A proposal from the second in command.
Yeah, absolutely. It is a proposal, and that's why he has been tasked to lead that meeting today. Then we'll come up with pros and cons. I mean, if the pros are more, then we'll see how to implement it. Because in this country, the issue is just implementation.
Yes, let's hear from Prof. Then Senator. Yeah.
You know, Zainab, I'm actually quite surprised with what Mheshimiwa is saying here, because I mean, all policy is to address an issue. That's where all policy starts. That's why we ask them, what is your policy on agriculture? What's your policy on education? We don't ask them for a piece of paper. We are asking them that, what do you see as the problem and how do you intend to go about it? This is my issue and my question. What is the Shamba system trying to solve? You are getting a solution without identifying the problem. Is it a solution for agriculture problem? If it is intended to be a solution for agriculture problem, then it's the wrong one. On the other hand, we are saying, is it a solution for our forestry issues linked with climate change? In other words, increasing our forest cover. Again, it is the wrong one. Is it because each of these issues, whether you're looking at food security, and that's what I was saying, that Kenya Kwanza seem to have a semblance of a plan around food security. And in fact, that food security and agriculture, there was never any mention of a Shamba system in it. The one that they sold to us during campaigns. They were very quiet about afforestation. I don't think that there are a very elaborate plan around that. This is my issue, that all policy, from theoretical whatever, we need to ask ourselves, what problem are we solving? We don't start with a solution and then find a problem. We don't say we shall take people to the forest and then this will sort out our agriculture issue or food security. Because that's how you end up perverting good policy intentions. And that's why I agree with the Honorable Sotsi here, that actually they need to take a step forward, backwards, and say, okay, fine, this is what you're going to do in the agricultural sector in the short term and in the medium term, and even in the long term. And this is what we're going to do about our forest cover that has diminished from 10% to now we are almost sitting 6%. It's 7 point something. It's exactly 7.2. But that is actually in question because some of those include degraded forests. Yeah, say fine when it comes to issues of climate change, when it comes to issues of afforestation and so on, this is actually our strategy. If the Shamba system fits within those things, then it makes sense. Otherwise, you end up with this very populist issue that might even actually take us backwards. On the Shamba system, the simple answer is no. I don't even know why we're debating it. It has been tested in this country. It has never worked. It has been tried by different governments. It has never worked. In fact, the only thing is that the outgoing government didn't even bother testing it because it's a failed system.
All right.
So we really don't have, why are we reintroducing a failed system?
Okay.
And imagining that it will work?
But then, is it fair perhaps, Senator, to say this was just a statement that was made by the Deputy President and not something that is already on paper, that it was just a proposal by word of mouth?
Let me tell you, I think from where I sit, I think it was not just a statement. That statement is loaded. And I think there is more than meets the eye in that statement. You are well aware that there has been some maneuvers to return evictees back to Mau Forest. And that's why when you see people like Senator Cherengei supporting that, it is part of the plan to return people back into the Mau Forest. In Honorable Rigathi's former constituency, we also have a problem of people who are evicted from the Mount Kenya forest. And that could be another way of telling them to go back where they came from. So this is very absurd. And that is why we are saying all this populist statement from the new administration must stop. They must realize they're no longer in the campaign. They must realize that they have the responsibility to lead this country, to organize this country. And that's why we are calling upon the president and his deputy. Please step backwards and organize your government. You cannot tell us that the PSS and the CSS who are there in Uhuru administration will continue in office until you have a cabinet. You have a responsibility to Kenyans to give us a cabinet that will implement your manifesto.
But it is
whether you are having internal issues in your coalition or not, we need a cabinet that will be making these policy positions, not two individuals roaming around the country,
but
giving a roadside declaration on policy.
Isn't it fair to appreciate the fact that perhaps, the new administration and the president is, and there has been a lot of jostling for these positions, even from the members who are very close to him, who are already even in parliament, hoping to get cabinet secretary positions, that perhaps he wants to get the right people in those slots?
Yes, he wants to get the right people, but then he should wait. He should not make serious policy directives without the intervention of his government. We need to have a cabinet, and the process in cabinet is that you do a cabinet memo, it is discussed, and sometimes it comes to parliament for further interrogation. So we would advise them to organize their government and only issue policy directives which have been interrogated by his own government, not just someone waking up and making a declaration, which in fact we were in Senate retreat, and most of the Kenya Kwanza senators were actually astonished by that statement from Rigathi, clearly implying that even within the coalition, there was no consultation among the coalition members on the issue of Shamba system, which is quite unfortunate.
All right. So let's do this. Let's take another quick break on M Live. We will be back in a short while. The hashtag to use as always is M Live NTV at NTV Kenya. Zainab Ismail will be back and sampling some of your views on some of these issues that we're discussing. We'll continue with, of course, what's happening in the dailies as we wrap up on some of these very pertinent issues. Stay with us.
Mivida Garden City, a residential development within Garden City offering stunning 1, 2, and 3 bedroom apartments, unique amenities, and an urban green convenient living. Call us today on 0722 123 000. Mivida, my home, my life.
At each stage of your business cycle, there are different opportunities and challenges. Has your business evolved and made strides to adapt and be the best in your field? Enter the 2022 Top 100 Mid-Sized Companies Survey and showcase how you have driven success at every stage of your business. Submit your entry at www.eastafricatop100.com. Survey extended till 7th October 2022. Top 100 SMEs. Be seated among the great.
This is the cutting edge of medical technology in South Africa. Now, these surgeons behind me are using the Da Vinci surgical system in order to do a prostate operation on this patient. Now, the system has very nimble, sensitive arms which can get to parts of the body which are difficult for surgeons to ordinarily reach.
Smart Tech is back. This season, we feature African innovators seeking to solve climate-related challenges in Africa.
I produce avocado oil. When I was doing research on avocado oil, I figured that I would need an efficient dryer to dry the fruit. And we designed a machine that was very basic, that processed around 50, that dried around 50 kgs of fruit in a day.
Crystal Rivers Residences along Mombasa Road comprises 3-bedroomed apartments, 3-bedroomed and 4-bedroom townhouses. The only mixed-use development close to the Nairobi Expressway. Easy payment plans available. Terms and conditions apply. Call 0757 620 202.
All right, thank you for staying with us. You're watching M Live on NTV. A quick run through on one other important story here on the Daily Nation we can't certainly miss. Operation launched after 8 officers are killed by bandits. Now, distraught families of the 8 police officers who succumbed to injuries after being attacked by Pokot bandits yesterday thronged Wilson Airport to receive the bodies of their loved ones as the National Police Service launched an intense operation to apprehend the killers. Now, yesterday, Turkana Police Commander Samuel Ndanyi confirmed that all the bodies had been recovered and were awaiting an airlift to Nairobi by evening. Now, some victims of the attack had appealed for security reinforcement through WhatsApp messages. And one of the messages here, and I'll quote, help us, Riet village has been attacked, please come help us, come to our rescue, reads one message. They were ambushed by the bandits at Namariat near Kakitelete village in Kapedo Napeitom ward. Now, the scene, 7 GSU officers and a driver from the police were shot dead. Quite an unfortunate incident there. I'll begin with Prof. I mean, this is a security situation, I beg your pardon, that we've been facing for many years. But we also saw that the president has quite, spoken quite strongly about this, also operationalizing the funds for the police. Maybe just talk to us about this.
Yes, definitely this is one of the issues that the president, even in the campaigns, really spoke about. And this is an issue that we are concerned about as Kenyans generally. And it's not just the policemen. We also know this area. We normally have very high number of pedestrian, local casualties, normal wananchis. And it's very sad that this is continuing currently. I know this is one of the areas that I'm actually very sure, because the president was very passionate about it, that some things are going to be done. But what is happening there requires almost an emergency operation. We cannot actually sit and see our people dying. And bandits in this area who continue actually operating with impunity across time. I think this one area that number one, we need to move there urgently. Yes, I mean the president has said fine, the IG has the funds now and can control operations in this particular area. So we expect the IG to move there urgently, but you also expect the president, because of the nature of the insecurity in this area, to actually give very quick directives so that the place is stable, and then of course put long-term solutions. You remember, this is also one of the areas that was affected with the delayed elections, and it was largely just insecurity. And we've had year in, year out, we've had very severe insecurities, government security workers, being killed in this particular area, wananchi being killed in these particular areas, and so on. Yeah, so this is actually one of the areas where, in fact, I think we will actually be giving our president the moral support that he needs, and whatever directives that he needs. This is a security issue, we can joke around with it, to ensure that this place is stabilized, and then long-term solution is actually found.
All right, Bwana Edwin, this is a situation we've been facing for many years. It is actually contributing to the food insecurity crisis that we're witnessing in that part of the country as well. What do you make of this situation? Where do we go from here onwards?
I mean, I think insecurity anywhere in this country, of course, has a ripple effect on most of the things. The economy doesn't grow. I mean, agriculture issues also go down. Schools are also affected. Health centers are also affected, and development is affected. I think, I mean, this problem was solved in Uganda. The other side of Uganda, it was solved. We don't hear about that issue anymore. So we can borrow a leaf, I think, from Uganda. And I think it's time for all these guns to be mopped out of this area. Because Zainab, you feel like you're in a different Kenya,
But I think we even had an operation, I believe that was 2 years ago, when the Interior Cabinet Secretary, Fred Matiang'i, had issued such kind of an operation to disarm, the members there, the bandits. But also, we saw curfews being, put in place. But really, the situation seems not to be improving.
But these operations sometimes are political. We know when the operations are starting, but we are not told when they are ending. Because, the political leaders come in. You have seen political leaders also been arrested previously, I think, maybe in 2 or 3 months ago. So this is fueled by so many issues. There is the political issue. There is also the issue of business, because you can imagine if this livestock is stolen, where does it end up to? I mean, maybe it ends up in the butcheries in Nairobi and other areas. So for me, I look at it as a business issue as well. So we need to also look long term. We need to look at what are other sources of livelihoods in these areas. I mean, can they go into agriculture? Because I understand there are some parts of the land in that area is very rich. It can support different varieties of crops. It has happened in some areas in Turkana, where there was abundant cattle rustling, and they have moved from rearing cattle to agriculture. We need to look at long-term measures, basically.
All right.
Yeah.
Senator, this is certainly business unusual. You have 8 GSU officers in this situation, dying and killed by these bandits. They've run away. Nobody has been arrested so far. It's a bad situation.
Really, I agree with you. In fact, one question that comes to mind is that how many bandits died? We have not been told how many died. I suspect none died, but our own 8 officers died, which means that the bandit could be having more sophisticated weapons than our own officers, which is very absurd. And that's why I agree with Edwin that disarmament needs to happen. And if disarmament is not happening, it means that the government must be involved somewhere. Because why leave the bandit to roam around, kill your officers, and you don't take any action?
But we've seen action from even the previous administrations. Yeah. Should perhaps this new administration look at a different way of approach in terms of handling the situation there?
I think it's all about focus, it's all about intelligence systems. And one thing that I did not see happen is that I'm wondering where the regional commissioner is for Rift Valley. Because you remember when we had the current governor of Transoya, Natembea, you could see visibility around that. Correct. You could see him moving up and down, taking charge of security. So really the regional commissioner who is representing the government should tell us what is happening. How can small boys carrying weapons kill 8 officers with no casualty on their end? It's really absurd.
But you think we do have the Rift Valley Regional Coordinator there, Mali Mahmoud, saying his warning of a major operation to flush out the bandits. But this, remember, is just statements for now until we see something is happening.
You see, this major operation should be proactive. Exactly. It should always happen before the calamities come. When they keep on talking about major operation when people have died, really, it's absurd.
Is it lack of intelligence?
Intelligence is there. I think there's something wrong with the way these things are happening. Could be political, as my friend Edwin is saying here, because some people are involved in cattle trading, even people within the government. And I think this is where another chance for Ruto administration to demonstrate their ability to handle with this problem, because it is happening in his own backyard of Rift Valley. You know, Pokoti, Turkana and Marakwet fighting each other, really happening in his own backyard. So, you know, when he was in Uhuru's administration, he was blaming it on Uhuru. But now, the mantle is in his hands. We want to see how he's going to deal with this problem as a head of state.
Maybe Zainab, just on the same issue. I mean, we also need to look at our borders, because our borders are very porous on that area. We know there are so many guns that are coming, illegal guns, that are coming from neighboring countries, which maybe I don't want to mention. The other thing is, if you remember about 4 months ago, there was a GSU officer who was arrested carrying ammunition from Nairobi, taken to Pokot and those areas of Turkana and Baringo. So it is internal. So if we can be able to address it internally, then we are able to solve the solution. Again, when this thing happened in Laikipia, we saw the army, even the drones. I think we have the capacity, as the senator is saying, but the issue is we are reactive instead of being proactive.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay. Before we just move on a little bit ahead, this is what's on the Standard. On the front page of the Standard, you have Ruto invites 40 clerics to purify State House. Divine intervention, they say. President held Thanksgiving prayers to celebrate his election win hours after jetting back into the country from the US, and urged the clergy to pray for his office and the economy that is choking in debt. That is on page 6 of the Standard. Eliud the Great there, by the way. He clocked 2 hours, 1 minute and 9 seconds. That's a new marathon world record at the Berlin Marathon. Just moving ahead still on the Standard very quickly. Let me get it. This should be page 5. So that's it. You have the full page. That's President calls clerics to cleanse his office in rare church service. You had over 40 evangelical preachers converged at the seat of power to what they call it, purify and consecrate it. The president used the biblical David and Goliath analogy to illustrate what the election win meant for him. Just on page 7, adjacent there, Ruto pushes for review of NSSF contribution. Quite a controversial conversation there. Remember last week the High Court stopped the bid to increase the monthly contributions. The president argues that people with higher salaries cannot save in equal measure as the ones with lower incomes. And you have the numbers there. We will touch on that just a moment. And stop excuses and fulfill your promises, Azimio MPs tell the President Ruto. And also on yet another issue that will be happening today, Raila calls ODM top organ meeting amid rebellion. ODM leader Raila Odinga will today chair a meeting of the Central Management Committee amidst growing discontent in his 17-year-old party. The party's top decision-making organ meeting is expected to address thorny issues that threaten to tear it apart. Maybe I'll ask this, Senator, what is the state of ODM right now?
I want to tell you that ODM is strong, and ODM is going to be stronger in the coming days. What you are seeing in ODM is members expressing their interest to lead the various committees in parliament.
Correct.
Or be parliamentary leaders, which is normal in every political organization that promotes
but shouldn't there
freedom
be
of
perhaps
speech.
some sort of consensus among, your members, the members of ODM, to come up, and even Azimio as, as a larger, party?
We had a PG meeting, a retreat in at Astoniathi, and we agreed on those issues. And you are aware our list has been submitted to the two speakers. So that matter is already settled. What we are seeing is a situation where members are expressing need to chair various committees. Honorable Babu Owino wants to be park chair.
You have
we have other members who also want to chair committees.
Right.
And as per the standing orders, it is up to the members of the various committees to elect their chairs. And
but
committees,
we're seeing a growing discontent here.
I
mean,
know, it's
when
not
you
really.
have
That's
Babu
what I'm
Owino,
saying. It's not a major thing as media is putting it. This is a small thing, and every 5 years we have seen this happen. It happened when I was in the National Assembly, where people were jostling to become chairs and vice chairs of committee and members of particular committee. It's normal. Even within Kenya Kwanza, they have a similar thing. Only that they have been gagged. They cannot talk. But in ODM,
Edwin will be telling us
ODM is the longest democratic party that exists in this country, where people freely talk and express their interest. Like in the last parliament, the Jubilee administration, they acted dictatorially because, they just called a PG in State House and they read out the names and said, so-and-so is going to be the chair of the committee. This committee and this committee, go home. And they went, and that is what happened. We do not want that situation. We want committees to be constituted, and I think ODM will be providing its list this week of how they want their members to sit in committees. Already Senate, we have already declared a preference of various committees that each member wants to go.
But the issue of the majority hasn't been resolved yet within the National Assembly, has it?
Well, the Speaker is going to make a ruling
Right.
on that. But our position is very clear. There is no debate about it. The majority party is Azimio coalition party. The standing orders are very clear.
But you're still jostling for the positions meant for the opposition.
No. no.
Yes, which is the PSC.
You see,
right.
let me educate you a bit.
Correct. Please do.
The standing orders are very clear.
Right.
That park oversight committees will be led by the side not forming government. The side not forming government can as well be the majority side, but they are not in government. So people like Babu Owino are perfectly in order to seek to become chairs or members of the PAC, which is an oversight committee. But that does not affect our position on the issue of majority. We have submitted our majority leadership structure to Speaker Wetangula, and we will also be proposing the names of people who are going to sit in the committee as the majority party.
Right.
The standing orders are very clear on how the process of determination of majority and minority is determined. So we do not expect Honorable Wetangula to act with impunity and declare Kenya Kwanza as the majority side, because the law clearly is not on the side. We have a few members who have moved to their side from UDM and this Ochieng's party, but they have not officially and legally exited the Azimio coalition, because within our agreement, coalition agreement, there are processes that you need to follow to exit, including giving a 90 days notice, including seeking the intervention of the council, which is chaired by former President Uhuru Kenyatta. So that has not been done. You cannot just move without following what you put
But on the 9th of November, once that clocks, I mean, whoever has already shifted to Kenya Kwanza automatically will be joining Kenya Kwanza, because, was it 90 days? That 90 days would have elapsed.
90 days you give a notice. And then that notice has to be processed by the council within the structures of Azimio.
All right.
Then you have 3 months to exit. So they have not followed that. So we do not expect Honorable Wetangula, in fact, this is a big test to him, to demonstrate impartiality and neutrality. Unfortunately, I saw him this weekend as Speaker of the National Assembly receiving defectors. And I wondered, when this is a top lawyer in this country who should understand that he is no longer a leader of Ford Kenya. He is the Speaker of the National Assembly who is supposed to exercise highest levels of impartiality and neutrality in handling national matters.
But you can, I think it is fair to also say that because of Kenya Kwanza, Wetangula managed to reach the position and actually get the members to elect him from Kenya Kwanza to be a speaker.
As soon as he became the speaker, he ought to have resigned as a Ford Kenya party leader.
Is that by law?
Yeah, that's a law.
Oh.
The speaker, you are not supposed to be the leader of a political party.
Okay. Let's hear from
because traditionally or globally,
all right,
the standards of parliament, the speaker has, even without the constitution saying that, has to exercise highest level of neutrality.
Okay.
And we expect, it was so absurd to see Honorable Wetangula, who is the speaker, receiving defectors to Ford Kenya. It's so unfortunate. I hope he is going to make a determination on who is the majority, based on the law, based on the standing orders, and if he does that, we expect him to declare Azimio as a majority party.
All right, all right.
Because of the numbers we have, the legal numbers we have on our side.
But many have called this a legal conundrum. So obviously it now sits at the hands of Moses Wetangula to give a clear way on that particular issue. I want us to also chime in on the conversation, but before we run out of time, there is something I would like us all to also have make a point on, and this is, that row between members of parliament and the Salaries and Remuneration Commission. Now yesterday, the Court Secretary General Francis Atwoli said there is nothing wrong in MPs asking for a pay rise, saying they should never be beggars, yet they're the people's representatives. Adding, according to Atwoli, MPs have huge burdens in their constituencies and thus they should be well remunerated. I really want to hear what Prof will say, but first, let's hear what Francis Atwoli had to say.
You know, members of parliament are supposed to be really members of parliament. If you say a member of parliament cannot be well paid, what are you saying? Our members of parliament are unique. So many people depend on them. And there are a lot of things they have got to initiate in their own constituencies and what have you. When you can tell them from earning what will give them the dignity as members of parliament, then you are doing disservice to the country. Our leaders must appear well, must dress well, must have nice cars, must be able to speak, must appear representative, must be seen as members of parliament. And it is us, as taxpayers, to make sure that they are well dressed so that they don't become conmen or do some other businesses which are not what a member of parliament doing.
All right, so that's a statement from the Court Secretary General Francis Atwoli, but there has been a lot of protest against that move from members of parliament by SRC to abolish that plenary seating allowance. You have car grants. There's a bit of adjustment there. Edwin, I just want to get your reaction as well as a member of parliament. How do you make of this? I mean, it's quite a bit of a difference from the 12th parliament.
Yeah, first of all, on the issue of the parties, I know senators talked about Azimio, Pamoja and Kenya coalition. Maybe I don't have rights to speak about it, but I can,
but you do. But
yeah,
but
I can tell you the level of disorganization anybody in this country can see, and that is why they lost the speaker position in parliament. They lost the deputy speaker, and even in the Senate, they walked out. So Senator Kingi was elected without any opposition because they could not marshal the numbers. Regarding the issue of majority leader, minority leader, Zainab, you are right. They are angling for the opposition committees, the PAC, the Public Investment Committee, and so forth. And for me, I know the majority party is UDA. We have 144 members. Azimio la Umoja wa Kenya coalition does not even have a single member. even a nominated MP or MCA. Regarding the Atwoli, I think he is right in a way, but because we had this discussion during the induction in Safari Park, we were not saying that we want the salary to be increased. We were saying that there should be an engagement between the Salary and Remuneration Commission and the Parliamentary Service Commission, because the Parliamentary Service Commission is the employer for members of Parliament, and I know Senator can confirm this. So this discussion should be held internally, but it should not be brought to the public, because what they are doing, SRC and the chair, they are just bringing conflict.
But you're public servants.
Yeah, but also we have an employer called Parliamentary Service Commission. These are the people who pay us. And we were saying that there should be an engagement. For instance, why should a cabinet secretary be paid more than a member of parliament? For us, we went to the people, even me and the senator, and we were interviewed by the people. And that is why we are elected as a member of parliament, and he was elected as senator. Cabinet secretary, we just vet them in the committee. Yet, you know, they have, I don't know, 10 bodyguards, 4 chase cars, and they even earn more than the members of parliament. These are the issues. We were just asking for fairness in the whole process.
But are those demands, according to, you know, I was looking at many questions that were posed yesterday after we highlighted that story. Are these demands commensurate with the current state of economy, considering that legislators in Kenya are quite well paid?
Yeah,
that's the assertion, that they're no, actually, I think it's a fact. Well paid, given, you know, the standard worldwide.
Labor law number 1, you cannot you know, reduce the salary of any employee. Yeah, those are the labor laws.
All right.
So we are not asking for any increment.
But that's not a salary. That's the allowance.
Yeah, I mean, we are talking about salaries also. Yeah, this is what we were discussing with the Lynn Mangich, the chairperson for SRC.
Okay.
But there should be a robust engagement between the Parliamentary Service Commission and SRC, so that they can solve these things internally without bringing them to the public.
All right.
Yeah.
Let's hear from Senator, then Prof, I'll come to you.
I think this debate is gotten out of context.
In what sense?
People are talking about why MPs need more money, why MPs are undertakers, why MPs are ATMs. I think that's out of context. The issue here is that those perks have been enjoyed by MPs for, I think in the last parliament where I was, National Assembly, we enjoyed those perks for 5 years. And then towards the end of our term, when we were busy in the campaign, SRC unilaterally decides to chop those allowances without public participation and without engaging our employer, who is Parliamentary Service Commission. So what we are saying, it is illegal for you, even you work here in NTV. Can you imagine one morning you come and you are told your allowances have been chopped without any form of communication, without any form of intervention? You have a right to ask why. Because the international labor laws are very clear. You cannot remove a benefit which an employee is already earning. And you say you have taken it away. So the debate here should be, was SRC in order to chop those allowances without public participation? That's the thing. And I think we are creating a dictatorial body called SRC. Even in this paper I've read that it's not just members of parliament who are complaining about SRC. I have read about civil servants union complaining about unilateral decision by SRC to interfere with their collective bargaining agreements. So really SRC must work for the benefit of Kenyans. They must not be seen to be punishing segment of the society, because I think the easiest people to punish in this country is politicians, the MPs, because you just go and say these people are doing this, they want to increase their salary, but we are not increasing our salary.
But chopping off those,
they have chopped their allowances, and we are saying, is it illegal for you to do? Is it legal for you to do this? Certainly, it's not legal. International conventions are there about remuneration of employees and what needs to happen in managing a benefit to an employee. So really the debate should not be whether the MPs need more money,
but at the
whether
end of it all,
the
we're
MP,
seeing
it
some
should
sort
be
of
about
tweaking.
Was SRC right in chopping those allowances?
Doesn't it fall within their mandate? But then another counter debate as we wind up on that and get to Prof. Kenyans are asking, I mean, isn't it time also members of parliament tighten their belts as the economic situation continues to deteriorate, as Kenyans are also tightening up their belts?
Really, we don't have a problem with tightening our belts. But we are saying our constitution provides for public participation in decisions made by government bodies.
Okay.
Why would SRC act clandestinely and illegally? They wait until the term of parliament is ending, and they did the same even in the 11th parliament. They wait until the tail end when parliament is out, has gone sine-die, and they come up with these proposals. They gazette these proposals. It is unfair. It needed to have gone through the whole process of public participation, through our employer, Parliamentary Service Commission, even members of public to give their views of why MPs don't need more money. And then SRC can take action. But this is a situation where they just wake up and make a decision without intervention of the stakeholders. It's very unfair.
Okay.
And that is the point. The point is not about us asking for more money. We are simply saying, did they follow the law in doing what they did?
Okay.
The answer is no.
And maybe just to just one point before Prof comes in. SRC chair earns even more than a member of parliament, and her salary has never been brought to us for discussion. Yeah. So I support what the senator is saying.
I mean, Prof, is it unfair to label the members of parliament as selfish? You've had names of tumbocracy and on all this, labels that have been thrown at them with regards to these allowances and the issue with the Salaries and Remuneration Commission. What is the state so far?
Zainab, let me just say that if you ask anybody, what they should receive as salary, even my house help will want to receive 1 million, and that's one. The second bit is that why did we put SRC in place in the first instance? I mean, salary payments in the public sector had gone haywire, and that's partly why we needed an independent entity to be able to actually create that rationalization. And this is a matter that just don't affect MPs alone. It affects all Kenyans. Yes, those of us who are in the university, we had a collective bargaining agreement 2017 to 2021. It has not been implemented at all. At all. And is expiring. In fact, it has already expired. The next one is actually being discussed, and the SRC is opening that. You can imagine that what was agreed to cover from 2017 has not been implemented. Of course, we've been told that it is because government is broke and the public sector is broke and so on. I think what is unique about the MP's situation is that they are able to hold SRC at ransom. The rest of the country cannot. And that way, then they've been able to get to get their way. And if this one, I suspect they will be able to get their way as it actually were. But again, the issue simply is that these are our members of parliament. They're the ones who represent us. We expect them to stand for us. We don't expect them to look good and whatever. Those ones they can sort out. But we expect them to say, Prof, munafinywa na SRC. And we are going to ensure that SRC does 1, 2, 3, 4 things. But generally, how our parliamentarians have gone about it, and I think that's partly why the perception of selfishness comes in. They only push for the agenda, justified or not justified. I don't want to get into that. But on the other hand, with total disregard of what is happening to all Kenyans, and that's why I was using the university situation. I don't really. It doesn't bother me whether I'm paid 10,000 or 50,000. All I want to be, in fact, what many workers are saying is that why can't we be paid what was agreed? In fact, the rest of the Kenyans are not even at the level of the MPs. We are saying whatever was agreed, which we're not even happy with, why can't we be paid that? But these guys, it's not just about that. It really is that fine. I mean, we need all these allowances reinstated. We need 1, 2, 3, 4 things. So that's the point that we're trying to say, that at least feel for Kenyans, even as you push push for your agenda. And it's okay for the MPs to push for the agenda.
All right.
Yeah.
Indeed. Quite well, you made your last point, Prof. We will be ending it there. Professor Alfred Omenya, governance expert, Edwin Mugo, Madhioya, Member of Parliament, and of course, Godfrey Osotsi, Senator Vihiga County. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for coming this morning to have this conversation. Well, we will be ending M Live, but Your World is coming right up in just a minute. And Winnie Lubembe is back from quite a long leave, I must say.
I mean, it was short, if you ask me. It's like, can I have like a few more days? But you did so well holding down the fort for me, so thank you.
Thank you as well.
So much.
So what will we be speaking about?
Well, today is World Contraception Day. And of course, it's a very, very important conversation for all of us to have, because again, we'll be talking about teenage pregnancies and of course the whole aspect of, the level of awareness as far as contraception is concerned. And this year's theme is breaking myths in family planning. So that is what we'll be talking about today. I would have wanted to put them to task as far as contraception and the male involvement, on the same. But again, I think you escaped this one, but it's good. So that is what we'll be focusing on today.
Fantastic. Thank you, Winnie. Well, we'll be joining Winnie in just a moment. But continue talking to us. I am seeing a lot of reaction. We will be sampling them later. I'll be engaging with you later. And this is M Live. My name is Zenabit Smile. Have yourself a lovely morning.